any participants come in?
Yes, I've done both of those and started the record. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to night 2 of our budget workshops for the 2021 year. Tonight we will be hearing from our community development, our parks department, and our public works department. But I know that some information went out from the finance department today regarding our revenues and expenditures. And before we go into our previously published agenda, I just wanted to open it up to a continuation of last night and have Director Soul share the information that went out today regarding revenues and expenditures. Director Soul? Actually, I should back up and formally open the meeting. This is a council workshop. It is November 18th at 6:31 p.m. I am Deanne Shaw, currently president of the Aberdeen City Council, and I now turn it over to our finance director, Patricia Soul.
Thank you, Council President Shaw. Let me share my screen really quick. All of you should have received this Adobe email in your email. This is just a draft summary of where we project cash at this point, the revenues and the expenditures. As I said in my email, I just want to say on the in the meeting tonight, the mayor has not had a chance to completely review all these numbers or make any adjustments or changes, and I haven't spent I've spent my time getting it ready. The next 2 days before we post it to you all on Friday, I will be checking for errors or things that are missing. So these numbers are not the final numbers. These are in draft form, and I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. I tried to provide you with a quick and easy way to look at where we're projecting the cash to be at January 1st of 2021 or the end of 2020. What we anticipate the revenues to be based on what we know at this point, what we've looked through, and then what we project the expenses to be. It shows what the remaining cash will look like at the end of the year. There are negatives here showing. Most of those are carry forward from prior year. Those are things that the mayor needs to review and guide as to his recommended action on those. The first page, Parks Fund. Also the museum fund. Oh, darn it, sorry. The museum fund here and the community center fund. This building is no longer there. So once we clear up this cash, this fund will not be budgeted in 2021. The fire truck bond, we paid it off in 2020. So you as council will be seeing an amended ordinance taking that request off of our property tax levies. And then this cash will be transferred and this fund will be closed. This fund will remain open because there are possibilities of receiving more community development block grant. I'll let the community service director talk to that. And then on the next page, the abatement fund, we left a small negative balance there for the mayor to determine how he wants to handle that. So as I said before, these numbers will change, but this is where we're at right now. And I will be turning, unless you have any questions on this, I'm going to turn it over to Council President Shaw to let the first staff person start talking.
So Director Soul, I would request one point of clarification. At this point in the process where, correct me if I'm wrong, but okay, where we see the negatives and the red, eventually the council will be asked to approve a supplemental budget for 2020. And that is because during the course of the year, we authorized expenditures that exceeded budgeted amounts, and that's why some of these accounts were allowed to go into the red. Is that correct?
Well, that's partially correct. That is amounts that were allowed to go in the red, but there were also amounts that were in the red to start the year. So the projected cash for some of these funds was in the red. Some of them look a little better than they did at the beginning of the year. Some look a little worse. So yes, we will be looking at a supplemental budget. That will be part of the discussion with the mayor as to how we plan to take care of that. So
So as council members, as we do our responsibility for budget oversight, we'll want to, keep a careful eye on what went into the red unexpectedly and which expenditures we approved, knowing that we would be asked to adopt a supplemental, because that's a really important distinction. What was unexpected and what part of some of this red ink did we, is predictable because we authorized it last June or something. So
For 2019 or 2018.
Right.
So yeah, there's some cleanup that needs to happen, and that's why I'm hopeful that the mayor and I will be able to take care of before the draft budget goes out on Friday.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Thank
So, yes, with that, I will try and change my screen. And according to my notes, our first department head on our agenda tonight is Community Development Director Lisa Scott.
Good evening. Hopefully everybody's doing well and staying healthy. I sent each of you earlier this evening what I'm presenting tonight. So I apologize for the late notice and getting it out, but you do have that. And I'm going to pull it up on there. But if you have anything you would like to refer back to after tonight, you have copies of it that I sent earlier. So with that said, I'm going to start off with our general fund. I'm going to start off with our general fund revenues. Okay, so we have 3 divisions within the community development department. We have the building division, the planning division, and the property maintenance division. We did have the code enforcement, but that is purely out of the abatement fund, so you won't see it out of this fund here. So what we did is we kind of gave you a snapshot of 17, 18, and 19 of what we were at with our budget, as well as what was adopted for 2020, where we're at with our budget, and then our budget request for 2021. So under the building division, and just scrolling down, we are asking for a $474 budget increase over last year. Pretty simple. We really are going to be under budget this year, as was requested of us to not spend during the COVID crisis. So I think we've done a really good job thus far. The end of the year will obviously tell us a bit more, but we expect to come significantly under budget for 20. So 21, again, we have an increase of $474. We are looking to replace 6 of the pads that we use for our inspections. We have 3 inspectors that use the pads, but we also get pads and get them to the fire department, the engineering department, and then the utilities. There's one that can be checked out from anybody else that wants to do inspections. So we have 6 pads available, and what that enables our inspectors to do is be able to go out in the field and do the inspections and take real-time notes on the pads, and it's directly entered into the permit system. So with that, that's kind of the building division. I didn't know if you just want me to go through the 3 divisions and then open it up for questions, or if you have any questions at all on the building division.
Council members, do you have any questions on the building division? So yes, please proceed.
Okay. The second one is the planning division. And so this is an increase of $82,375, and the increase is primarily all the comprehensive plan. We did not spend that this year. We held off on the contract we issued, and will be hopefully starting in January of 2021. So you'll see the professional services category. 30 of that's normally what we budget every year. The 120 does cover the comp plan, and that includes the additional fee that council had agreed to after the contract had been okayed. Also, you'll see in there a new line item, which is legal advertising, and this is new to this division purely because we've always spent it, but it's come out of the legislative budget. It's never been under the planning division where it should be. And that's advertising that we're required to do for any of our land use actions, which includes variances, conditional use permits, SEPA checklist, shoreline permits. So all of the legal advertising required comes out of that. So it is money we have been spending. Again, it's just coming from out of the legislative to where it should really have been put. So with that being said, if you take out the 120 for the comp plan and then also the 15 for the legal advertising and the 50 we budgeted for a comp plan last year, we're actually under budget by 32,625. So the 82,000 looks a little, but honestly, it truly is all comp plan. So other than that, we would be under budget. And again, this year, we are significantly under what we had budgeted for 2020. So, and are there any questions on the planning side of it?
Council members? I did have a question about the comp plan. I thought the total amount approved for the comp plan was about 150. So why are we carrying forward 150 when we already spent some this year?
Actually, it's only 120 that we're carrying forward.
Oh, it looked to me like it said 150.
The 150 in the budget, 30 of it is what we always budget under professional services for the other contractual agreements we have. So only 120 of that is comp plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And also I attached, when I emailed out the Excel spreadsheets to you guys earlier, I also attached our budget narrative that kind of walks you through, and especially for the new council people, walks you through exactly what our divisions do and our departments, and then also what we have on the horizon for 2021. So you do have a narrative in there as well to help go with the numbers.
Thank you.
So then the final division for community development is the property maintenance division. And so actually, I should have highlighted the equipment rental reserves. We have approximately 10,000 in reserves right now, and we need to replace, we're going to want to use the truck that this division uses into abatement. And so we need to get a vehicle for this department. So we're asking for a $15,000 reserves allocation this year so that we can get the vehicle purchased in 21. So that's really the biggest change. And then the other biggest change you'll see on wages, and that is because our property maintenance division inspector went from an inspector 1 to an inspector 2 when he completed his commercial certification for inspections. So that is a wage increase from I think it was a 16 to a 19. So with all that, we're kind of we're about $20,000 roughly over what we spent in 2020, but 15 of that is for the vehicle, and that left about $5,000 roughly, which is the wage increase when he went to an inspector 2 versus an inspector 1. So are there any questions on those expenses for the property maintenance division? And I'll get into I'm going to go into the revenues here in a minute, so I can answer some questions on our revenues if you have any. But this
I have
is
a
just
question
on the inspections. Yes, sir.
15,000 for a vehicle.
We already have 10 in reserves, so that 15 would be added to the 10, and it gives us 25.
And what type of vehicle are you thinking?
Small SUV through the state bid license.
Oh, so you've looked into that and you can get it that cheap?
We have, yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Sounds pretty cheap.
Yeah, we're doing bare bones minimum. We're not doing anything really excessive or expensive, but the little truck will be able to serve the code enforcement nicely for debris removal. So,
Okay.
Council,
and also, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
do any council members have questions? Okay, go ahead, Director Scott.
Thank you. One thing I do want to add is next year, we're going to be working closely with our legal department. We want to take a look at the property maintenance ordinance. And we need to look at beefing up sections of our code that right now are we don't really have a method or a hammer, so to speak, for getting people to register their properties that are refusing to register and renting. So we want to take a little bit closer look at that next year. So that is one thing I wanted to mention that is on our horizon. So you could see this year, I think in 2020, we requested a $574,131. And this year we're requesting $676,927 for the 3 divisions. And that primarily is the comp plan that you're seeing. So we expect after that to go back down to normal levels.
So I'm confused on, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm confused on why there would be an increase because of the comp plan when the comp plan was budgeted this year and we're just carrying it forward.
Because we didn't have the full amount in 2020 when we set the budget out. And even though council had authorized the increase for the revenue, it didn't make it into the budget. And I think that was about the time that Cliff had left. And so it just never made it over.
And the
So I
increase
was just going off of what was budgeted.
the increase was about $30,000, right? And this looks
Yeah,
like
but
100,000.
even the amount didn't get changed in the budget, and I don't know why.
Okay. Well, there's time to look more closely at that, so I understand. I won't take up everyone's time. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then I'm going to scroll down a little bit further, and I'm just going to do revenues really quick. So for the revenues for the building division, you can see 17 through 20. We are tracking, and these are a little bit easier for us revenue numbers to get because they come directly from our permit program, which is real time. So I just took it through the end of October, but you can see we are above what we budgeted for in 2020. So we expect the next 2 months to be even higher with the revenue coming in. So in 21, we did increase our revenue request. And I will say right now, I know that in January, we will get a big chunk of change in when the college comes forward with their design plans. So we're going to track really well for 21, which, you know, is always a little nerve wracking, especially when you have a change in leadership on the federal level, and you never know quite what's going to happen to the markets and how things will go. So we're still going to come in with a little bit of an increase in our revenues, and I think that we've proven that over the last several years that we've been tracking better. So we feel comfortable in making that leap. The planning division, the fees, we keep them, just so you know, we keep all of our fees as low as possible with variances and conditional uses, because we want people to, government can be tough as it is, and we want people to do things the right way. So we figured if we could just keep it to what our expenses are going out. So we keep our revenues relatively projections low because we keep our prices low. So that's kind of what you see for the planning division. And then on the property maintenance division, you'll see what we adopted in 20, and then where we're at year to date, and then what we're requesting in 21. I will say that we have completed 217 inspections this year on the property maintenance, and we have roughly about 560 licenses that have come in. Again, if I had to, I think we're going to get better numbers once census is completed, but I think we are somewhere in the neighborhood between 2,000 and 2,500 rentals in Aberdeen alone. And again, we're only at 560, so it has been a struggle to get people to register. And again, some of those that only have one rental aren't required to register the one rental, especially if it's for a family member. So those are something we'll be continuing to track into 21. And again, we'll work with legal on ways that we can better enforce the program. So that's kind of where we're at with the revenues. Are there any questions on the revenue?
Council members?
Wow, good
Oh.
job, guys.
Chair Shay, do you have anything else?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. So, well, thank you, Director Scott. That's lots to digest. And we'll be following up with you as needed, each of us. If you have anything, feel free to reach out to her before, as you know.
And I have 2 other funds to do too, so.
Oh, okay.
Or 3 other, but I'll do it. Hopefully the 2 will go quickly. The abatement fund will take just a little bit of time.
Okay.
So the next one I'm just going to jump to real quick is
Yeah.
homeless response.
Oh, good.
Okay. So this is a lovely fund that we were gifted with, and we're so appreciative.
You're welcome.
We're doing the best that we can. Obviously, you'll see in there that $321,000 will probably be roughly where you guys have authorized to be spent this year for the tassel camp. And yeah, the
How much of that
expense.
is CARES Act?
I don't know on the allocations there. I don't have that breakdown, but I will definitely get that to you. I think there were some things that we could spend it on and others that we couldn't. And so right now I'm not sure because we track a month behind. And so I need to get the final figures to you for COVID, which I could do at the first part of December once our final allocations are in. So, and then we are still under the governor's no eviction order. I'm asking for a 3-month allocation in 2021, and this is purely based on last year the council made a decision to not close tassel during the winter months. And so I purely am asking for January, February, and March funding for tassel to get us through those winter months. No matter what the governor comes out and says, if he says, yes, the eviction order's at the end of the year, this is still requesting 3 months. So. Are there any questions on that?
Councilmember?
Lisa, I have a question for tassel. How many residents are there now, and would you expect going through first quarter of 2021?
Right now we are at 21 residents, I think, or 21 tassel members. It just really depends on what housing becomes available and CAP's ability to get those that are into housing. Or if they choose to leave on their own. But right now we're at 21, and I would consider, we won't go up from there, but we could go down.
Okay,
It
thank
still
you.
wouldn't change. I don't think it would change the cost significantly because the security would still remain the same. We have one guard on 24/7, 7 days a week, or that is 24/7, sorry. And so I don't anticipate that would go down. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are
Anyone
there
else?
any questions on the homeless? Okay. The abatement, okay, so we're moving on to the abatement fund. So this is the fund. So this is both nuisance abatement, which are your garbage complaints, your nuisance type complaints, and then we also have the building abatement fund. So the struggle this year has been, one of the concessions we made was to not hire in 2020 the code enforcement specialists that we had requested and got approved for in 2020. That has been really difficult with the added weight of Tassel and taking care of Tassel and the numerous nuisance complaints that have come in. It's really not allowed our code enforcement officer to help on the abatement fund. Because right now, when we need to do abatements of houses, we have to write search warrants. And those take literally up to a day to do, and we're just behind. It's hard for him to get in the office to spend the time to do that when we've gotten so many complaints that he's all over the city dealing with. So it's been a struggle. We do the best we can. Contrary to what you may see on social media, we do respond when people call in, or we also encourage them to use the online system to report nuisance complaints. And that way you can track your complaint as it goes through the process. But whether it comes in the computer or if it's a phone call, our code enforcement officer tracks everything, and it's just not a fast process by any stretch. We have to follow the law, and a lot of times it's write a letter, give them time to respond. If they don't respond, then we have to send another one. Then we could go out and we issue a ticket or issue the cleanup order. So sometimes something that seems so simple can take months to take care of. So it is a process, and again, we do the best we can. If we had some additional help, it would be really beneficial. So we do have the position in again for this year's budget. Abatement was one of those funds that you saw in the beginning when Finance Director Soul presented. That is in the red. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who might remember, when the city purchased the River Street property, and then the city purchased several other properties at tax foreclosure sale, the funds were taken from the abatement fund to purchase all of those properties. So the abatement fund is why you see a big negative balance. And we try to keep a positive balance in the abatement fund for projects of when we need to potentially go in and tear down a large structure. That's usually a commercial building, say that's usually in the range of $250,000 to $350,000. And so we have not been going after some of our buildings because, quite frankly, we just don't have the money in the fund to handle it. So we're very hopeful that council will either see to reimburse the abatement fund for the funds that were taken out for the land purchases, and then look to make whole the general fund when those properties sell, or we're just not going to be able to do very many abatements. So that's kind of the story on the abatement fund. We've been really fortunate to partner with Public Works, who helps in their off months to tear down some of the houses that we have on our nuisance house list. Again, it's been slow. We've had a lot of people that have come through and taken the homes down themselves. We have had some that we've done. But again, it's a tracking nightmare, and we're getting a little bit better, but it's been slow. I'll tell you, it's just getting the time to follow and dot the I's and cross the T's. So we're really hopeful the new position will free a lot of our code enforcement officers' time to be in the office to handle the what we need him to do. So And that's kind of it in a nutshell for abatement. I don't know if you guys have any questions on that. Abatements is a lot to swallow. So again, let me know if you have anything, or just review it later and ask me any questions that you have on this one.
I have a question.
Sure.
Or a comment at least. On the abatement.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing is a real concerning, definite need to make that item whole, that account whole, because it's getting to a critical point in my mind of the particular building downtown that we need to deal with.
Mhm.
I guess I'm being real
You want
conservative
me to
in
go into detail about
my
that?
words, but yeah, but I would like to use our reserves to make that account whole, and then should we in the future sell that property or get some money back for those properties, then we can just reimburse general fund with that. But abatement, I think, needs to be reimbursed sooner rather than later, so that we can get going on that particular project.
It really shouldn't be the fund that's used for property acquisitions. I think once we get the ordinance in place, it might be in our best interest to maybe look at having a fund. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there for real estate transactions. I think this was a somewhat attractive fund, maybe because it had a balance. But the mayor's right, we've got one building in particular that is going to be quite a challenge to take down. And we're working with one of the public works people that they have on their, and I'm losing my word, I'm sorry, but they have it on their schedule that they work with an engineer, because we have a common party wall in the building we're looking at. So when we go to if we do take it down, we have to take that into account. And this isn't something we have budgeted, but we plan to, once we get the final number on that, we would come back to council for a recommendation of whether or not you're going to choose to go forward with taking it down, or we just can't afford.
So without going into all the reasons why it's going to fall on us to take it down, is there a reason why we have to tap dance around what building we're talking about?
No, it's the Pioneer Paper Building. It's the one that was referred to as the Pioneer Paper Building, which sits next to Jack and Trish Thompson's property on the corner of F and Heron.
That was actually what I was going to point out. The importance of the other wall that you mentioned was that's the Jack's building there. That's
yeah, that's a tricky takedown because it's right in between two buildings, but it does have a common party wall, which means it's a little bit more tricky to demolish that, as well as there are some asbestos concerns. So we have an engineer that's going to come take a look at it so that we know what we would need to include in a bid estimate that we can come forward to you guys. So it's not going to be a cheap tear down, that's for sure. And so that's why we have a fund balance and keep that in the abatement for emergencies such as this.
Lisa, with these abatements, can you go after the owner for the cost of the abatement, or
are the property? Most of the time the owner doesn't have the money, so it's a lien on the property. And 9 times out of 10, when it comes up to the county for foreclosure, it's sold, and then whatever the county sells it for beyond what they get out of it, we get some money back from that.
Lisa?
Rarely is it ever paid in full.
Lisa, I just had a question. As you're looking at the former Pioneer Paper Building,
yes,
the one that touches the renovated building, it's almost kind of 2 buildings wide, and then there's another building right next to it.
Yeah.
All 3 kind of, that whole space is propped up. What's the status of that other building?
The 2 in the middle come down the one to the,
The far
I guess
right,
that'd be
the
to the
lower,
west of it, to the
right,
west.
one level.
Yeah, that, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's not a party wall.
Oh, okay. It's propped up in the photo I'm looking at, but I don't know if that's still the status or what.
No, it's the 2 buildings that encompass the Pioneer paper. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but that was the explanation of typically why we have a balance. You guys have been really good, the council, in authorizing $100,000 every year to be put into the abatement fund, so that we can do abatements. And so it has built over time, and that does at least allow us to take down some of the emergency properties without having to go to the general fund. So, but in this instance, yes, we are in the red because our fund was depleted. So
So my whole point in bringing this all up is what I would like to do with this budget before the end of the year is make that account whole by replacing that amount of money out of reserves, so that abatement is ready to go. And then the reserves can be paid back if and when the properties are sold. So I just wanted to make that clear so everybody knows.
Lisa, on that one building in downtown, what kind of costs are you looking at? I mean, how much of that do you think we could?
I don't know right now because we need to get that engineer's report done, but it's probably going to come right in between 250 to 350, and that's 350,000 to 250,000, not $250.
Right, I understand. In a case like that, would all of that lean back onto the property, or would some of that be written off, or how would that work?
It would all lean back to the property, and I mean, you all see what's going on with vacant properties and typically what they sell for, and county gets their back taxes first, and then whatever's left comes back to the city. So we usually aren't made whole on these by any stretch of the imagination. I know in the past we have bought some abatement properties at auction just so that we could have control over the property. And we've done that a lot with houses in particular, so that if we have a partnership with NeighborWorks of Grace Harbor or Habitat for Humanity, we've let the properties go for nothing because 1, we know it'll get back on the tax rolls, but 2, we know it's going to a low to moderate income family. So council has picked properties up and then waived our costs associated with that just for that reason.
So,
But we have done.
Director Scott, I think this is a really important topic, but you're right, it kind of is in the weeds for tonight.
Absolutely.
But in a quick nutshell for the newer council members, this is what we mean when we talk about getting downtown Aberdeen out of the floodplain. Because until or unless those properties are out of the floodplain, the rules and regulations, property owners are upside down. There's no incentive to take care of them, let alone remodel or fix them, but once they're out of the floodplain, we're hopeful that it changes the whole dynamic of what property is worth down there and what people are willing to do. So, but yes.
I have one more fund, but that's it.
Yeah, I know you have more fun, but this is a really important topic, and maybe we should just kind of park it for now, but plan to revisit it so that the full council kind of comes up to speed, and maybe some options on how to deal with it, because there's probably not just one answer. There might be some options we could look at that don't necessarily involve, just the one proposal. Maybe explore some, different ways to deal with it. So
I think that would be wonderful. I look forward to any, sometimes you know as well as I do, you can plan inside a box, and you do need to think outside the box. So I'm open to any suggestions that we can do to make this more viable.
Thank you. One more fund.
One more, and this one's a quick one. So this is the Good Neighbors Revolving Loan Fund. I think I need to get the beginning cash balance. I think we're probably right around the 200,000 mark, not the 150, but anyway, this is the fund that we use to make Good Neighbors loans, and we have a committee that oversees that. And it's been going really good. I'm hopeful that the new year will bring some excitement with people and wanting to reinvest in their buildings. So again, this is that fund that we use. We didn't do very many loans this year. I think COVID we anticipated doing about 50,000, but COVID really threw things for a loop. So we didn't spend that much. We are still getting revenue in because we have outstanding loans that are paid every month and one annually. So again, this is one of those pretty quick and simple, but if anybody has any questions on that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Because of the nature of this fund and how it's developed, how it's designed, we have, as everybody knows, the insurance money. And so my question is, could we take a piece of that insurance money and readjust this Good Neighbors loan fund program so that it could take some of that money and invest it so that we're not spending it on something without getting a return?
Absolutely. And I think that would be a wonderful thing, but I think in terms of that, it would be nice maybe after the first year to look at having a workshop to talk about that. Okay. Because I think there's some really good things we can do with this fund and really show that we're making an investment in our community. So I would like to explore that further, but again, I think maybe after the first year, once we get through budgets and know where we're at with COVID and things. But sure, I think we've got a potential to make this really an awesome program for the community.
I'm great with that idea. I just wanted to bring it up here, means we have it out in front of everybody, that that's something we could probably look into later.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's it from me.
One more question, please.
Yep.
This may be in the materials that you sent us, but do you have a allocation of FTEs across these different programs?
Funds?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 5 individuals. You have myself, the assistant director / code enforcement officer. I have the property maintenance inspector, the building inspector, and a permit tech. And we have budgeted an additional body for code enforcement, which was not filled this year, which we're hoping to fill in January of 21. So there would be 6 total, but there's 5 across all these funds.
It would be interesting just to see the how their time is allocated.
Oh, absolutely. I have that. I have that for you, and I'll send that to you. It wasn't included, but I will, and some of it's changed from there. So I do have that done, but I'll send that out to you.
Thank you.
It needs to be tweaked, obviously, from 2017. So.
Well, thank you, Director Scott. If no other council members have questions for her, our next presenter is our Parks Director, Stacy Barnum.
Thank you. I will share my screen. All right. Okay. So I thought this would be a good time. We have many new city council members to talk a little bit about what does the Aberdeen Parks Department do. I think most people think that the Parks Department mows grass, plants flowers, and does adult sports or youth sports. But there's so many things that the Parks Department does now. So we've got the maintenance division. In our maintenance division, we have 3 full-time employees, and we can have anywhere up to 15 seasonal employees during the spring and summer. We are required to have NPSI certified staff. That's National Playground Safety Institute. We have to have someone that's NPSI certified that inspects our playgrounds. We also have to have staff with public pesticides applicator licenses. So we have 2 individuals on our maintenance staff that are licensed for that. And all of our staff goes through various types of risk management training. Because we're a public parks and we have playground areas that are frequently used by children and families, it's important that we understand the risks that are associated with those types of facilities and what we need to do to make sure that it's safe. We've got 16 parks, over 200 acres of developed property, and it's valued easily well over $15 million. In the city of Aberdeen, the second largest portfolio of city managed property is managed by the Parks Department. We're second only to the Public Works Department. We also run the beautification program where we have 160 hanging baskets and 130 ground pots. We're responsible for 189 trees downtown and the 36 trash receptacles. We're also responsible for all of the city-owned art. The city currently owns about 50 pieces of artwork throughout Aberdeen, and I did a conservative estimate of a value easily at $2 million. For buildings, we've got an indoor practice building, the Rotary Log Pavilion, we've got 9 restroom buildings, a couple maintenance shops, 4 trail systems, and the Armory Annex building. We've got baseball fields, soccer fields. We work in partnership quite often with the Public Works Department on our construction projects. We do the holiday decorations in downtown. The maintenance staff assists with the museum when we need something moved or something set up at the warehouse. And as Judge Solon mentioned, we partner with municipal court for court assigned community service. And I think before COVID, we were running around 400 hours a year. And we also have a very valuable volunteer program where groups clean up in our parks. And we also work with the Bloom team, who I think most people are familiar with. So here's some of our maintenance staff at work, including Public Works employees who, like I said, we rely on the Public Works Department heavily to assist us with our major construction projects. And then on the administration and recreation side, there's 3 full-time employees, myself, the parks director, there's assistant parks director and a recreation coordinator. We run all the adult sports programs, the youth recreation programs. We schedule with all of our youth sports leagues for use of all of our facilities. We do all the special event permitting for the events that happen around Aberdeen. We've got a volunteer program. Our rec coordinator also is our volunteer program coordinator. We manage the community event sign as you come into Aberdeen. We do capital projects. We're doing a park remodel or a major project probably every year. I also answer to the park board. The park board is 5 members. And you in my screen, you guys are blocking part of what it says for me, but you can see what the duties of the park board are under Aberdeen Municipal Code 2.60. I'm also responsible for the Lodging Tax Fund grant program, and I work with the Lodging Tax Committee. And since the fire, I have been responsible for working with the museum board. I'm responsible for the museum. We're also responsible for the Rotary Log Pavilion and scheduling events there. We put in grant applications and we do many donation requests. So for 2020, just at a glance, some of the bigger things that I worked on, like I said, since the fire, I was responsible for the Armory fire insurance claim. I'm currently responsible for the museum and working with the Board of Museum and History. Submitted a large grant request to Washington State RCO for $300,000 for the Little League Field project. just partnered with the Public Works Department on another RCO grant application for $700,000 for property acquisition to build a boat launch. I'm serving as the City of Aberdeen's representative for any reimbursements to FEMA, CRF, and our COVID-19 response, and recently formed an RV park committee to assist with the plan and design of hopefully building an RV park at the Bishop Complex in Aberdeen. So the main fund, the fund that I think everyone thinks of when they think of the Parks Department, is Fund 102. In 2020, our budget request was a little over $970,000. And for 2021, we're requesting a little over $1 million. That's an increase of almost $88,000. Some items that attributed to that increase are the requirement that all city departments start paying their water bills. So we've estimated about $11,000 for our water bill next year. As Patricia Soul mentioned in her presentation last night, the Parks Department has requested an FTE, administrative assistant, that would be shared between 3 departments. So that's a portion of that person's benefits and salary at 25%. We also contract with the YMCA for our summer park and play program, and that cost about $20,000. That's a very important program. We've seen record number of children using our parks for the park and play program, the summer free lunch program, and also the library in the parks. We administer the Archive Social. Archive Social is a contracted service where they will retain all posts on our social networks that all city departments use for any public records requests. And that costs $3,800 a year. And there will be employee cost increases for those who are receiving step increases. And we're also seeing a pretty significant jump in minimum wage in 2021. And in the budget request this year is the replacement of 2 gators that are used at Pioneer Park for our maintenance staff. They're about 24 years old, so they're well past their lifetime. So that is Parks Fund 102. Were there any questions so far?
Council members?
And I know when Patricia Soul sends out the budget on Friday, you'll have a line item version of all of the funds that I manage. Okay, next is Paths and
Stacy.
Trails. Yeah.
Stacy, I had a question. On the administrative assistant, is this going to be another person then in your office with you and the 2 guys?
Yes. It would be an additional person that works 25% parks, 25% community development, and 15% museum support. The main job of this person would be the processing of our vouchers, which are currently done by a finance department employee.
Oh,
Anything
Thank
else?
you.
You're welcome. Paths and Trails. So under RCW 47.30, our city receives a portion of vehicle fuel tax funds, and we can use that money for improvements and to maintain our paths and trails in our park system. So our beginning fund balance estimate for 2021 is a little over $19,000. And we estimate a revenue of about $2,200 will come in 2021. I don't have any expenditures budgeted at this time for that fund, but on occasion we'll use some of that money for sign replacement along our trails or repairs to our trail system. Morrison Park and Pavilion Fund 107. So this fund is for the Rotary Log Pavilion. It's a special revenue fund or an enterprise fund. It can be considered that way. All of the income is generated off of the rentals, and all of the expenses are paid for from the income from the rentals. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we've seen a significant decrease in our income, but that's also reduced our expenses. We're planning for COVID-19 to impact our facility into 2021. So we've reduced our budget significantly. In 2020, we had a budget of a little over $47,000. And for 2021, we're just over $30,000.
Stacy, on the,
Yes.
this is Deanne, on the log pavilion, is the decline in revenue and the inability to continue, making ends meet, is that a CARES Act reimbursable impact? Because I know that some of our area museums have been able to demonstrate that the decline in attendance and their decline in revenue is directly related to COVID, and they've been able to get reimbursement for lost revenue.
Well, my understanding is CRF funds cannot be used to supplement revenue downfalls, but I can take a look at other expenses that may be eligible for CRF money. Oh, that's a good suggestion.
Stacy,
Yes.
I just had a quick question. With the court system using the log pavilion for their, for their spread out and socially distanced meetings, are we seeing any revenue from that, or is that just a departmental transfer kind of thing?
We don't charge other departments for use of the log pavilion at this time.
Okay. Now, is that something that, the state has talked with us about, other types of things that we should be charging ourselves for? Is that
Oh, yes. When we get audited, they, for example, like the water bill. For many years, departments did not have to pay a water bill, and that was one of the items that was audited and determined by the state auditor that we need to start charging ourselves. So for something like, it's a city-owned building, and if it's used for city business, which the municipal court is a part of the city, and it's not a utility fund, so I don't believe that we would have a requirement to charge other departments.
Okay. I only ask because in a case like this, it would seem like that could be an itemized CARES Act thing for someone else, because it was something they had to spend money on.
I could bill Susan and then she could use some CRF money.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep, I like that. I'll send her a bill.
It just seems that maybe it's not on the revenue at the log pavilion, it's not a revenue shortfall so much as it is a revenue prohibition due to the ban on gatherings.
Yeah. No, you're right. Because the requirements, we can't, it's not possible for us to meet the requirements. So Museum Fund 125, you will see some significant changes to. The Board of Museum and History, as you know, has spent a considerable amount of time working on building the museum back up. And in order for them to continue the work that they're doing and actually do work that needs to be done, they have requested a museum registrar. The museum registrar would be a new full-time position. That position with benefits and employee costs is estimated at about $119,000 a year. And then you can also see the administrative assistant time. That's that full-time employee. That's 25% parks, 25% community development, and 50% museum. That gives us a total budget with other costs for the museum fund, which include our monthly warehouse payment of $4,000 a month. We pay for gas. We pay for garbage service, and we've had a number of times when we've utilized professional services. So I've kept some money in the professional services line item as well. So that would be a total budget request for 2021 of over $280,000. Compared to last year, that's an increase of $167,000. $167,538. Were there any questions about the museum fund?
Council members?
I have one. without the benefit of seeing the whole package, if money is really super tight and there isn't enough money to pay for the registrar position, would it be helpful to at least go ahead and find funding for the admin assistant position?
For me, selfishly, it would be very helpful having even just an administrative assistant. But for the work that needs to be done on behalf of the museum board and on behalf of the collection, it really does require a museum registrar.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's a good question.
It seems to me that the importance of a registrar is either we turn the lights out, you close the door, lock it on the storage, or we need to get a registrar. I mean, maybe that's a little overboard thinking, but it seems to me it's almost that serious. So if we're going to, I think for me, the concern is if we're going to move forward with our museum plans or hopes, they really need this person. But you also have to remember too, is that we don't have any revenues covering this. This will be adding new funds that we will be paying out.
So with the council's indulgence, I would just like to suggest that we all know that we are at a crossroads on how we are going to go into the future with this. And it's what I'm seeing presented here tonight is not my understanding of what I thought the museum was actually asking for. So I thought the museum registrar position incorporated administrative assistant support for Director Barnum. And I'm also hearing 25, 25, and 15. So that's 65% administrative assistants. So I'm not sure where's the other 35% of this administrative.
That's 50, not 15.
50, 25, 25, 50.
Oh, 50. So I think that, you know, that maybe just to make sure that we are well grounded, we have a council representative to the museum board, but just to make sure we're well grounded going forward, given the dollar number on this, maybe we should ask the museum board to be part of our next presentation so that they can make their own, so that they can make a pitch. So we want them to feel like they had our ear, because we want to be able to hear from them, I think.
So would you like me to work out with the
casting, not to say you're not doing it, Stacy, but I would just, it's going to be a tough decision, and it's a budget year, and it's a big decision, and I think we want them to feel like they had our ear.
No, I agree. So would you like me to work with the museum board to attend the next council meeting to make some type of presentation as a guest speaker, or one of the next council meetings?
I think that would be terrific.
Okay.
Because they have asked for this previously.
This is
they asked for
this.
Yeah, they asked for this position previously.
That's correct.
Yeah, and they didn't, it was voted, or we dropped out of it or voted against it. I can't remember exactly.
And we still don't have, you know, the full balance sheet on everything, you know, that has come and gone in the last couple of years since the fire. And this is a perfect example of the council doing our jobs, trying to get a full accounting of where are we now and what's the best decision to make, given the people we have appointed to bring a recommendation to us.
Well, you confused me when you spoke about the registrar and the administrative person. It's two different people.
Yes, and my understanding was that the museum, and again, I've tried not to be too overly informed about this, but from what little I've picked up, I think the museum thinks that their part of the administrative assistant can be wrapped into the registrar position. That they don't need to be that registrar doesn't need to be we're not to the point where we need a quote unquote full-time registrar, but we need a registrar who can also support Stacy. But we need to hear that from them. Whatever anything I say is just kind of picked up, hit and miss.
All right, I'll make sure and reach out to them so that they can come and give a presentation and answer questions.
That'd be great.
All right.
I'm wondering,
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Liz.
I'm wondering, are there any grant monies available through the Washington Department of Archaeology and History for helping to cover a new position?
That would be a great thing for a museum employee to apply for.
And that'd be a great thing to ask the museum board, Councilwoman Ellis, because I think they have some ideas along those lines that think of grants that they would like the city to apply for, that to date we've not had the support and resources to devote.
Good.
That's
thank
part
you.
of the problem is there are no museum employees.
Yeah.
And so as the parks director, I can certainly do what I'm doing, but my area of expertise, unfortunately, is not museums. And if you really wanted to go after a grant, I think it should be somebody whose area of expertise can put forward the best application.
And I would just like to keep the slate as clean as possible for the council so that the museum board can make their own pitch and that we're not just kind of guessing. So
Definitely.
So
Okay.
because our timeline is short and
Yeah.
Friday's coming up fast, I just want you to repeat that this is a new budget item.
Yes, this is new. Yep, this is new. This would be 2 new full-time positions that has not existed before. Yep. Anything else for Fund 125? Okay, just got two more funds. The Recreational Sports Fund, Fund 132. Fund 132 is a special revenue fund as well. Other than the $20,000 transfer that we receive from the general fund for the Splash Festival, other than that, the fund is self-sufficient, and all revenue that comes in is generated from the programs that are operated within that fund, which includes our adult sports, our youth sports and camps, the Girls Fast Pitch program, and the beautification program. And then all that revenue that is generated pays the expenses. One thing, I looked on Springbrook real quick before this meeting, and it looks like the $20,000 for Splash was transferred this year, and we don't need it. So I'll work with Patricia Soul to either have her put that $20,000 back into the general fund, or I can reduce my request by $20,000 for 2021 because we'll already have the $20,000. So I just saved $20,000 just like that.
Good job.
All right. We expect total revenues to be at $270,000 this year, or in 2021, and our expenditures to be at $76,400. So we should end the year just under $200,000. So we like to keep a large balance in that fund for any unexpected expenses that come up in the future. And the last fund that I manage,
Stacy?
yes.
Stacy,
Yep.
Did we have any expenditures for Splash? The monies that we had paid out before we got shut down or whatever?
We did pay for the fireworks, and I believe the fireworks and the inflatables, and both companies have agreed to carry that payment over to 2021.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. The last one I manage is the lodging tax fund. The lodging tax fund is what is utilized for our lodging tax grant program. We budget about $65,000. It looks like we've got $64,000 budgeted this year for grants. We try to keep the reserve balance the same, and we try to only spend what we bring in each year. So we can keep that balance there in case any large projects come up in the future. Now that was at the direction at the city council. And of course, the council can authorize that more money be spent or less money be spent. So unless I hear otherwise, I will plan to budget the same for next year. And that's really it for the lodging tax fund, unless anyone had any questions.
Yes, could you give me an idea of what kind of projects or grants
Yeah.
are given out?
Definitely. So we're getting ready to review applications right now. So you'll have some requests that will come to you in the next 2 months. And we get requests and projects that have been funded in the past include the beautification program downtown, Winterfest, the Midnight Cruisers event, the Whole Harbors Farmers Market, Sunday Market. The Seaport does some activities and they've received funds for it. The Downtown Association also has done an event called Summerfest during the summer. And this year they're doing Light the Downtown. So for the holidays, they've purchased a significant number of lights to have hung on the trees downtown for the holidays. Let's see, what else am I missing? It varies. Oh, we also receive requests for our Aberdeen's Art Committee, and they use that money for the murals that you see around town, and also for restoration work on the Gamalius critters.
Mm.
So those are some examples, and it varies from year to year.
It's interesting that the beautification program also falls under the 132 fund for recreational sports.
I think that ended up in the recreational sports fund so that the donations that we receive don't end up in the general fund, so that they stay in what's like an enterprise fund, so that we make sure that money is used for what it was donated for. Yeah, I agree. It is funny.
And then as well, the beautification program can get further funding through the lodging tax.
Yes, so they submit an application. They being
it's just
Stacy,
a
the Parks
grant.
Department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Stacy, what I'm seeing is if we keep a balance around $180,000, we can draw 75,000 off of that every year.
Yeah, right around 75. And we can keep that principal balance carrying from year to year.
And usually every year we have well over $100,000 worth of requests.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can see where I'm going. If we had a larger beginning balance, we could obviously have a larger amount to give away. And usually these programs are scrutinized as to how they bring dollars into our community before they're given away. And so it is somewhat of it is an investment. It is something that we get a return on our investment from. Although lodging tax, it's some of it's not so much as others, but so I'm wondering I'm just thinking if it would be a good idea to like increase the beginning cash amount to some degree in order to make the payout larger.
I believe the request for this year totals somewhere in the $80,000 range. So you could certainly make that adjustment through the budget process if you'd like.
I'm just thinking of ways that I can invest some of the insurance funds so that they're bringing dollars back into our community.
Mm-hmm. I think
So that
Parks
was
is a good investment.
That was just a question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So didn't the lodging tax fund used to be called the stadium fund? If you're going to make an investment, It used to be that this fund was intended for capital construction, but because not everybody wanted an event center / stadium in their city, they kind of loosened the rules and let it become a little bit of a pork fund to fund activities and events.
Yeah.
So
That is true.
Deanne, that is in line with my thinking that the lodging tax would be a good source of revenue for some of the Gateway project.
and so I would just say, Councilwoman Ellis, that is a perfectly logical question to have, and that one thing that Stacy Barnum has done amazing in my view. The lodging tax expenditures in most cities are there. It's
It's pretty
very
regulated.
competitive,
Mhm.
and very personal to lots of people. And if we were going to make any changes, and the system that Aberdeen has arrived at has served us well and has been managed really well by Stacy, we are without controversy in that fund for a number of years now, except for a couple little dust ups now and again.
Mhm.
But if we were going to do anything different with that fund, it would have to be very intentional and very transparent, because the system we have arrived at has evolved and is currently working for the participants who volunteer and try and do so much for our community at the with their events. So, but yes, that is a perfectly reasonable discussion to have, but it will be, I predict, a very lively discussion if we were to go down that path. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, thank you. And I hope that you all learned a little bit about what else the Parks Department does, and in our budget request, how we spend the money that you allocate for each of those funds. Once you receive your budget from Director Soul, feel free to email me if you have any questions on any of the funds that I'm responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at my little, oh, here we go. So next on our agenda is, wow, somebody with a huge budget, and it's already 7:45. So Director Sangder, Public Works, I will turn the meeting over to you. And this will be interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is gonna be a tough one. I don't think we've ever been under 2 hours, so I will do my
Thanks,
best.
Rick.
Am I sharing my screen? Does anybody
Yes,
see it?
you are.
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen? Because I didn't even touch anything. It just started sharing.
Hey, Rick, I went ahead and shared the presentation.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. Chris is under control here.
If you'd
Okay.
like to do it, I could
No.
stop sharing.
Nope. That works great. Our budget is over all of our utilities. We also handle facilities. We handle arterial streets, some budgets that we fund projects out of. So we have a lot of breadth and depth. It's me and Chris tonight. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge doing it online, but anytime Chris has something to offer, I encourage Chris to just speak up and offer it. Chris, maybe you could, put your picture on. That way I can you wave at me or something and I'll let you know. So basically we put this slide up first every year just to let the council, we have new council coming in, let the council know what our mission is, what we try to accomplish, what we see as our function in the city. I'm not going to go into the depth that Stacy did on what she does in her department, but we are stewards of public infrastructure, facilities, and environment. We handle engineering, construction of capital improvements. We plan for long-term sustainability, and we try to provide excellent customer service. So the Public Works Department has 55 budgeted FTEs, full-time employees. We have currently 2 vacancies. We just recently filled one on Monday. 55 budgeted, so we're now at 53. We have 2 openings. We will be looking to fill those at the first of the year. We kind of put them off until the first of the year, just basically because we didn't truly understand where the COVID hit was going to come from with the taxes, and so that was part of what Public Works did to try and make sure that we stayed under budget. The 2020 department-wide accomplishments, we have we've been having an ongoing of significant increases in grant and contract management for capital planning. This is you guys have probably heard me say a number of times is that there's no grant out there that we don't apply for, and there's a couple slides here that it's going to be real obvious that we are really active in that. That is really turned into almost a full-time position in itself. Chris does a fantastic job of managing these, and honestly, he's a little bit self-directed when it comes to it. Sometimes he's already halfway through the process before I even know that there's a grant available. So we're really lucky to have Chris on board, and he does a fantastic job. So, but Chris is overworked. So you're going to hear me come and ask, well, we budgeted last year for the engineer 3. We have not been able to fill that position, and we are at a critical spot, maybe an impasse, where we are just almost to the point where we can't get any more grants because we just can't administer them anymore. We're on that critical path. So I'll go through these others. We have emphasis on policies and ensuring compliance with our municipal procurement requirements. That's new. When I first started, we didn't have a purchasing policy, and it was kind of the Wild West. And it's a much better process now, but it is an effort to try and follow the rules. We have a citizen action request process. I checked today, we had 167 citizen action requests to date. Of those, I talked to Sherry Runyon, handles the administration of that. Every citizen action request that comes in either gets a letter, an email, or a phone call. So there's always a follow-up. If it's something that we can't handle immediately, they get a letter, and they also get a follow-up letter when we have handled it. So, and that's all documented. We have a shareable Google document that people can come in and take a look at if you'd like to see those requests. That's something over the last 4 years we've really tried to improve. There was always a complaint that city wasn't taking requests and citizen concerns seriously, and we have listened to that and really tried to improve on that. So we've fostered an open and collaborative work environment where we've tried to encourage interdepartmental coordination and support. I know you heard from Stacy saying that we work with Parks Department a lot. We work with the police department a lot. We've done some work for the fire department. We really try and be a team player when it comes to, we have a big budget and we have a lot of workers. So, and then we've also, one of the things that we did internally is we created an administration office that allowed us to centralize our customer service and our public works staff support. So we have a one point where we get our mail packages, keep time cards. It used to be spread out between the street, water, and sewer. We created an office at the water department where our administration coordinators are now, and they keep everything there. We've also made that a sealed area, restricted to other public works staff by either a counter or a window pass through. So that keeps our administrative coordinators safe with the COVID and social distancing. So that was something that has gone through. I wish I had a picture for you because it turned out really nice. The first budget we're going to talk about is facilities. The 2020 budget was $415,000. The 2021 budget is $496,000 and some change. It's a difference of about $81,000. Some of our accomplishments is we've installing some gates at the Aberdeen Police Department. That was done with some basically a reallocation of some of our facilities funds. Basically what's happened is due to COVID, we received direction from the mayor to hold off on our capital improvement projects because nobody knew where this was going to be. So all the capital improvement projects that you saw last year in the facilities budget are in this year's facilities budget because we didn't replace an elevator, we didn't fix the roof, we didn't do the concrete work. All those things were deferred until we knew where we were at. So all I've done is I brought those same projects forward, and then we also added, as it turns out, let's continue on, Chris. So these are the facility projects. Last year we had replacing the roof at 150,000, and you can see it's there again. Last year we had fixing the elevator at 75,000, and then we got a notice from our elevator maintenance that it needed to be replaced. So right at the first of the year, we talked to the mayor, we made some adjustments. What we were going to do is we were going to replace the elevator at 150 and repair the roof for 75. So neither of those happened. The brick ceiling for 5,000. We looked at a full-time janitorial employee, but between the time last week till now, that's been taken out, so that we were just looking at a way to better save money for a janitor. I think Patricia is still looking at encumbered costs, and so I don't know where that's at. Since that elevator maintenance company told us that we need a new elevator, we've had a new elevator maintenance company come back and say we don't need a new elevator. So if Stacy's taking credit for that, I'm taking credit for saving $150,000. So anyway, if I left it in there because one company said we need one company says we don't. They both say it's old and antiquated, and we should budget for a replacement at some point. So basically what comes down to is this might be a good time to replace an elevator while City Hall is not being utilized like it normally is. I'd hate to go through this whole COVID thing, have us come back out on the other side and then replace an elevator, when we actually need it. So anyway, I left it in there for you guys to consider. If the elevator is removed, which is totally within your discretion, then some alternate projects that could be considered are rekeying City Hall, which was deferred, reconfiguring the back entrance at 10,000, and restoring the plaza area in the front of City Hall. And all that, the plaza area is just all the concrete ground around the fountain that's settling and has trip hazards. And the back entrance, both of those would be city staff. That's just for materials. So anyway, let's skip ahead, Chris. This is, we talked about things to do with our insurance money. So one thing that me and Chris have talked about and wanted to bring up, and we know this is just a proposal and a suggestion. We have no authority. I just want you to be aware of it. I talked to the mayor about it. He sounded interested, but it's just something to consider. And that is, in our watershed up around Malinesky Dam, we don't control all the property. ITT Rainier owns a lot of our property right up to our reservoir, and we've experienced a lot of erosion and sedimentation over the years. We've approached them. They're willing and interested in selling. They don't want to be in our watershed either. One thing that could be done for $2.3 million, we could buy 1,600 acres. That's 2.5 sections. It's a good value. I think it's about $1,400 an acre. It has been logged within the last 10 years. Some of it, it's 10 to 15 years old. So it would be harvestable again in 35 to 40 years. For $2.3 million in 35 or 40 years, your value, it's paid itself off and you've controlled your watershed. It's not, we didn't put it in our budget. It's not in there. I just wanted the council to be aware that is something that could be considered. And we put it in facilities because right now all of our forest land is in utilities, water, and industrial water. And if it was in facilities, then that's a general fund. It could be used for general fund. It could be used to fund a fire station. It could be used to do whatever you want in general fund, fix city hall. And the main thing for public works is it ties up our watershed and gets other landowners out of our watershed. Is there any questions on the facilities budget before we move on to engineering?
I have a quick question, Rick.
Okay.
On the elevator, isn't the elevator kind of a requirement for us to maintain some sort of ADA compliance, especially for city council meetings and getting people up to that second floor?
Absolutely. So the elevator, the reason they said it needed to be replaced was because they said it had a single bottom piston, which I assume that means it's got a single bottom on the piston. But anyway, the elevator's old, and that's why I left it in for now, just because if we push this down the road and in 2 years we have to replace an elevator, one, the price of the elevator's gone up. And two, now we are having council meetings back in City Hall and we have an ADA problem where we can no longer accommodate the ADA. So when that happens, when the elevator was out before, we canceled council meetings and we looked at moving them to the log pavilion. So that was just, I just wanted to give you guys options and let you know that we're looking at the long term and trying to be proactive. I understand that it's a lot of money. So, I also believe it'll be the first thing cut. And I'm fine with that. I just wanted somebody to know that, there's some concerns there.
Hey, Rick, how old is that elevator and what's the expected life of an elevator? I don't expect you to know part 2 of that, but if you have any insight.
I'm glad you don't expect me to know, because I don't have a clue. I would guess that the elevator was probably put in the 50s, 60s, but I don't know.
Probably with the building.
I bet Margot knows.
No.
The elevator's original equipment.
I
when
would
it was,
say
what,
so, yeah, it was probably
1966?
original.
1965 or 6.
Okay. So, yeah.
And as to length of use, we're probably well beyond it.
Yeah,
because Aberdeen does that with their
I
stuff.
think so, yeah.
So the good thing is we did talk to the company that maintains our elevator now, and they have stated that there are parts available and that and they're readily available. So they don't have to search for them. There's still parts available. It's just an old antiquated elevator.
That's one thing I was going to point out, is that the elevator, it does go through an inspection process. So it's always been up to code. It just probably getting to the end of life for finding parts.
Right. Yeah. They do an inspection of the elevator twice a year.
What have they quoted you for making repairs?
Well, they gave us a rough scope and fee estimate of $150,000 to replace it.
Oh, but what about repair?
When they were when they were talking about repairing it, what they were talking about was replacing the piston that had the single bottom, and that was around $75,000. And that's what we budgeted for last year was the piston replacement. The problem with that is it was put in like the mayor said originally with the building. So they actually had to suspend the elevator and cut the piston out piece by piece.
Hey, Rick, as the photo that you have up, I'm sure the topic will be related coming up, but I also wanted to point out along the Westport Highway, recently, there's been a lot of rain, and where you'd normally see flooding over the last couple of years, it looks like where the drain was replaced in front of Emery's Auto there. It looks
Yeah.
like that has relieved a lot of that flooding along the highway there.
Right. Just a quick note on that. I don't want to get too much in the weeds because we got a long ways to go, but that Emery's culvert, when we got that, what's happened is the water jumps its bank up Charlie Creek and flows down a ditch, and then it gets below grade and can't get back into the Charlie Creek channel. So what it does is comes out to the road and goes down the ditch and follows the ditch back and joins back into Charlie Creek. The problem with that is that culvert in front of Emery's had a rusted bottom, and when the flows got high, it actually and you know the current got increased. It lifted that bottom and closed that culvert off. So that created that water going over the top. So we went in. I believe it was in 18. Yeah, 18. And removed it during the storm, and then we went in back and replaced it. I'm right now working on FEMA reimbursement to get reimbursed for the materials on that project. It looks like that's going to go through. Sorry about getting off topic.
I'm sorry, and I'll quit commenting. So
no, it's okay. So I'll move on to engineering. Engineering has 7 employees. That's counting the engineer 3 that is currently vacant. We have actually tried to fill that position for about the last, what, Chris, 8 months, 7-8 months.
Yeah, it's been advertised since March or April, I believe.
Yeah, it's a very fair wage. I honestly don't know why we haven't been able to fill it. We've had a couple people interested, but we're really anxious to get it filled. We have more work than we can do. This position would allow us to do some more of our internal inspection work, and construction inspection is called CI work. And a typical thing for us with our projects is on our big capital improvement projects, we end up having our consultant maybe do some of the inspection work, or most of the inspection work, and most of the project management, and then we pay 10 to 12% of the construction costs for engineering support, which is a huge amount of money. So the idea is to get somebody on staff that has that high level ability to start doing more of the CI work in-house, and administering all these grants that we've received. So the budget for engineering for 2020 was 408,000. The 2021 budget is 439,000. Increase of 31,600, and that's basically the costs of increased wages and the portion of the engineer 3 that's tied to the engineering budget. We've allocated that engineer 3 wage to other utilities where he'll be working, water and sewer, self-funded utilities, to have them help pay for that increased cost. These are just some of the projects that we're working on. 2020, we worked on the North Shore Levee, the Fry Creek restoration and flood reduction phases 1 and 2, the Aberdeen US 12 highway rail separation project, downtown Aberdeen revitalization, which is the roundabout at Market and F, the Transportation Improvement Fund, which is, we call it TBD, it's TIF, it's the sales tax increase for road and sidewalk projects. And then we also have other transportation, water, sewer, and stormwater projects. A lot of that we do in-house. We constructed we call it GICNIC, which is Grace Harbor College Neighborhood Connection. We've done the Bossich Boulevard slide repairs, and we're just wrapping up our sewer plant disinfection system upgrade, which is also referred to as bulk hypo. Our 2020 accomplishment continued. We we have a huge pile of concrete from concrete roads and concrete sidewalks that we paid a crusher to come in and crush, and we use that rubble now as an aggregate in the road base and other projects as a way to offset the cost of buying rock. So we're recycling that material. We just recently got an emergency proclamation for the disinfection building roof. We've got some big issues over there and we're working through those. We have our sidewalk repair program, which is basically homeowners are able to contact us, get on a list. We go out, we inspect their sidewalk. If it is in need of repair, we partner with the homeowners. They pay for materials and we remove it, form it, pour it, and finish it. So it's a lot of times people can get frontage improvement in front of their house. The city has a duty to keep up on our sidewalk replacement. Usually for a 50-foot 50-foot lot, they can get a new sidewalk for under $500. It saves the city. The city has to keep a program moving forward where we're replacing trip hazards to show that our commitment to that. So it works well to partner with the homeowners in that regard. And then we also had the continued interagency and intergovernmental coordination. We meet with the port and we have a lot of projects with Hoquiam. We're working with the state. I would, in my 22 years here, we've never had better relationships with our sister agencies. So grant funding requests. Like I said, Chris does a good job of applying for everything. So these are some of the grants, or these are the grants this year that we've applied for. So you got the Fry Creek Pump Station Economic Development Administration. That's pending. Didn't know if we were gonna get that one, so we applied for another one. And that's Fry Creek Pump Station FEMA brick grant that just went through this week. The Aberdeen US 12 Highway Rail Separation Project. That's a build grant, not awarded, but applied for. Evans Street Safe Routes to School is pending. Huntley Street Pedestrian Bicycle Program is pending. Farragut Street Pump Station Flood Authority is pending. Fry Creek Restoration and Flood Reduction Phase 3 pending. All these are grant applications that have been put in. Sewer Pump Station Improvements, which is CDBG and SRF. We weren't awarded, but applied. The Fairview Reservoir Covers and Liners is not a grant, that's a loan. But we are applying for that as well. You'll see that in water. And awarded in 20 was the Bossage Slide Repair, a $1 million loan with a 20% forgivable principal. We exhausted every grant opportunity before we got the loan. That's what took some time. We wanted to really give an effort to see if we could find money other places, and we couldn't. So we're lucky that we were able to get that loan and get that repair work done before the end of the year. We have our wastewater treatment plant influent screening and conveyance improvements, WRF, and that's a $800,000 loan with a 50% forgivable. That's going to be for next year. That's at the that's going to be at the wastewater treatment plant. And then the Aberdeen US 12 Highway Rail Separation Project is a state ask for $700,000. Challenges for engineering workload exceeding staffing levels. That says it all. That's exactly where we're at. We have excellent staff in engineering. All those guys are really bust their butts. And I'd like to add that, through this whole COVID thing, they have not taken any step backs. They're in the office every day. In fact, we just finally had to tell them they had to go back to, with this new COVID, governor's proclamation, that they had to go back to working from home a little bit, but they've been fantastic. I can't say enough good things about them. They really outperform the FTEs that we have. So increasing demands on division staff for design and management. That sounds simple, but what that is forever we kind of left water, sewer, and street to their own devices. They just kind of went out, and if they had a sidewalk, they'd just throw in a sidewalk. If they had drainage, they'd just throw it in how they thought it should be. We have tried to run everything through engineering so that we have a design. We can track it. We can have as-built of it. We know what we're putting in, and then we also have a good idea that what we're putting in is going to be adequate for years to come. It hasn't always been that way. It was kind of a design on a napkin type thing and pass it through the hall. So engineering is operating at capacity, anticipates increasing demand for service in the next decade to keep pace with serious planning, management, administration, design needs to ensure the long-term success of our city. We are right now, we're tracking over $200 million worth of jobs. So, and that's in the next 10 years. So we've never been so busy, and we've never been so successful in getting grants, and we've never had so much work on the horizon. So it's all good. I mean, it's a good place to be. You guys recently passed a rate increase that is helping us fund our capital improvement projects in water and sewer. And stormwater, where we're starting to save our money for in stormwater for our share of the costs with the levy. So I think we have a good plan moving forward. I'm sorry, Chris, go back. So again, continue supporting our current projects. This is our proposal for 2021. We're going to continue to look for grants. Writing and administration, going to continue to identify, prioritize, and address long-term needs as a role of deferred capital improvements. And again, deferred capital improvements doesn't mean that we haven't been maintaining. It's just our stuff's old. So we haven't deferred any maintenance. We've just deferred replacing it when it was time to be replaced. So, and then to utilize consultant agreements to full extent possible to accomplish work. We have some money in our miscellaneous other, and engineering allows us to have on-call consultants to do the work that's specialized, that is not being able to be done in-house.
Rick?
Yeah.
So you said $200 million worth of projects?
Yep.
So if I'm not mistaken, doesn't that add up to almost $20 million in consulting project management fees?
It could, if it was 10%. Yeah. But we got $80 to $100 million in a levy. We got $45 million in a grade separation in East Aberdeen. We got all of our pump stations. We got $10 million in the water department and covers and liners and dredging the reservoir. We got $30 million at the treatment plant and upgrades. So yeah, getting an engineer 3 is going to help, but we're still going to have to rely on consultants to a certain extent.
Sure.
one person just couldn't do it all. What we're trying to do is, and we understand that there's a role for them too, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to pick some of that low hanging fruit. You know, the on-site inspector, the person that has to keep all the documentation. We're trying to get more of that in-house instead of tasking some basic, project documentation with somebody that's making $200 an hour.
Yeah.
Our consultants who are highly trained and highly skilled, they make a lot of money. We don't have and this is established by the state, what their billable rates are. This is, these are not negotiable. These are,
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Did anybody want to ask any questions in engineering, or should we just wait until the end? Am I baffling you with my bull? Okay, we'll move on to street. Street department is responsible for operations, maintenance, and construction of the public transportation infrastructure, including surface stormwater collection. The budget for 2020 was 2.2 and 83,000, and for 21 it's 2,582,625, which is a difference of about $300,000. So in Fund 103 Street Department, our accomplish is we've continued to maintain the streets and the right of ways. We do our mowing, we do our street cleaning, we do miles of stormwater cleaning, stormwater conveyance cleaning. We have a regular interval where we're sweeping alleys. That's something new. We try and sweep alleys at least once a month and flush them, just because of changing patterns. A lot of garbage in the alleys that didn't used to be there. We put down 540 tons of new asphalt and 50 yards of new concrete sections, and that's in the roads. That doesn't count the sidewalks. We put in 20 new catch basins over 150 feet of 48-inch culvert for stormwater conveyance. We also, at the beginning of the COVID, we had 4 dump trucks, and we moved 5,500 cubic yards of material out of our Charlie Creek dump site over to the Hoquim Lagoon. That's permitted, a permitted dump site to fill that lagoon. The reason we did that was we had to keep our guys separate. It probably, on the surface, it probably didn't look like a great use of time, but it was better than sending them home. And we didn't really, at the beginning, we didn't really have options. There was people working on administrative leave. So we put our guys in a dump truck by themselves and had them haul material over to Hoquim all day long. And what that did was that allowed us to create 5,500 cubic yards of space at our dump site. So now, instead of our dump site being full in 5 or 10 years, we have probably 20 or 30 years of space up there, and that's our permitted dump site. So that's a huge benefit for us in the long term. It was, I would say, it's probably wasn't as efficient as I would have liked, but at the time when nobody could work together, it was something we could do, and so we took advantage of that.
And it didn't cost to dump it over there.
Right, free to dump. And the nice thing was Hoquim, through an interlocal, loaned us their 12-yard dump truck for a month, and we used it. All we did was put gas in it, or diesel. So that was we have a really good relationship with Hoquim now. They borrow our equipment through an interlocal. We borrow their equipment through an interlocal. We work well together on the levy. Brian's at all of our meetings on the levy, offers input. We've got that combined project of the levy, which is taking a long time, longer than I ever thought. But we are working and moving forward, and we have a consultant who's active and moving forward. That's all I can tell you. The challenges is we could have just wrote for Public Works that COVID-19 was a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge for every department. It's for every, not just Public Works, but police, fire, everybody. So we have compliance with ADA design regarding roadway and sidewalk improvements. And we also had some increased demands for engineering staff to coordinate. We probably put that bullet in too many times, because it's pretty much, but I mean, you get it. Engineering's busy, and they have a lot to do. So 2021 proposal highlights. We're going to continue existing service. We've added 25,000 for additional ADA ramps. We have street lighting improvements of 100,000, which is basically that's about 20,000 more than it was. It was 80 last year, and that was another thing that got deferred. Talking with the mayor, we decided that every department had to come up with 10% possible cuts. That 80,000 was not spent based on the fact that we didn't know where we'd be. So we put it back in there this year. It didn't get spent, and the budget wasn't as bad as we thought it was. So the money's still there. It'll be carried over as beginning cash. But we added 20,000 to do some more lights up in Bel Air. We have 50,000 for an assessment of city-owned traffic lights, and those traffic lights are on Market Street. And you can see the picture in the arrow pointing there. Basically what it comes down to is these have been hanging there for a long time, and there's no parts anywhere. So our city electrician said he needed $50,000 to replace a light. What we believe needs to happen is we need to do an assessment of the lights. His number was 50. We don't think that would even cover it, but that was the placeholder that he put in, and that's the amount that we're asking for, so that we can do an assessment of the lights and come up with a plan. We'll check the distances, the crossing distances, and we'll look and see if there's other alternatives. Do we really need to replace those lights? Can we get away with the 4-way stop? Can we get away with the 2-way stop? Can we add a bulb out to shorten the crossing distance to make it safer? There's lots of things that can be considered, and that's what that's for. And then we now have an annual Bossage loan payment of $40,000, and we added $175,000 to equipment rental reserve. Equipment rental reserve is a problem. So the street department has a responsibility to have equipment rental reserve, and that means they have to have it has to be run the way the state mandates it be run, and that is you have to have a depreciation schedule for all your equipment. And that means as equipment depreciates, you put money back into the account to replace it when it has no value. That's not how we've run our equipment rental. What we've done with our equipment rental is we run it until it won't run any longer. We just replaced a dump truck that was 22 years old. A depreciation schedule would replace that dump truck at probably 12 years. So we got another 10 years out of it. And we want to continue doing that. That makes sense to us. We have mechanics. That's how our equipment rental department pays off, is they maintain that equipment, keep it running for a longer period of time, and we get more life out of it. But we did get a management letter of some sort from the auditors complaining about the way we run our equipment rental. So this is, right now, I think there's $150,000 in there in our equipment rental for street department. And we have probably, I would guess, $1.5 million to $2 million worth of equipment. That $150,000 is not enough, according to the auditor. One thing that we're doing to help alleviate that is we got that FEMA money, $600,000, and we're replacing street department equipment. So we're replacing a skid steer and an excavator. And so those two pieces of equipment will be brand new. And what we'll do is we'll take and rotate the stuff the street department has to other departments. And that way they start out with a new piece of equipment that we can start depreciating for over a longer period of time. So we don't have to make up for lost ground on this new stuff. So the 175 is basically because we have a $450,000 Vector truck that has to be replaced probably, well, they've been asking for it to be replaced for the last 3 years, but I'm guessing it's got 2 or 3 more years. And like I said, we have 150,000 in there, and you can't buy a $450,000 truck for that. So anyway, that is typically the first place budget cuts happen. If you tell me I've got to cut 5% out, it's going to go straight to equipment rental and cut 5% out. That's the one area that doesn't affect what we do in the field. It just doesn't allow us to buy equipment when we need it. I would like to add that the Public Works Department has nice equipment. I don't want anybody to think that we're complaining. We have nice equipment. It's well maintained. there's nobody complaining about the equipment we have. We're just trying to administer it the way people are telling us to administer it. Patricia has volunteered to help us figure out a way to meet the requirements and come up with, meet our responsibilities there. So I'm sure we'll come back with something. This is just, a way to address it immediately.
Rick,
So-
I have a question on maintenance.
Okay.
I'm not seeing a line item for repairs to non-arterial streets.
What street are you talking about? What type of work are you talking about? Are you talking a replace, like paving?
Yeah, it would be replacing concrete panels.
We keep that in our TBD. So we do all of our, we do our street replacement out of our TBD or our TIF, Transportation Improvement Fund. And that is an annual budget of, I think about $800,000. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah.
And with that $800,000, we break that into percentages for sidewalks, for concrete panels to be replaced, for gravel roads to be paved, for overlays, and also we use it to leverage into other grants. That's part of the reason why we've been so successful in getting grants, is because we have upped our match from the minimum to a little above the minimum. So with all things equal, granting agencies are more likely to give you money if you're willing to put more money in, if you're willing to have more share in the game. So that's the secret that we have. That's the difference between us and Hoquiam and Westport and all those other communities around us, is we have a transportation benefit district, and we're able to increase our match. It's not that they're not doing and going after the same dollars we are. It's just that we have a little bit of advantage based on the fact that we can leverage some of our money.
Have you done a condition analysis of all of the city streets to kind of develop an overall game plan for keeping them serviceable?
We've done an analysis based on requests for TBD. Chris, have you done an overall analysis on everything, or is it just based on the TBD streets that council has requested us to consider, and then we go out and grade those?
Yeah, we haven't done an assessment of every single street. The way in past years, we have done TBD inspections, but the streets that we inspect are based on solicitations for bad streets from staff, from city staff, from the council we have done in the past, and also based on citizen action requests. So if a citizen action request comes in and says, my street's full of potholes, that has the potential to be added to the inspection list. And then we go out once a year, and the engineers do a rating. They do a visual inspection and a rating, and we put that into a large matrix that takes into account which ward, which part of the city each street is located in, whether that street is has a federal classification, which means whether it's eligible for grant funding or not, and then the overall conditions. And it's sort of a balancing act to, well, first of all, you pick out the worst streets, but we also try to spread them around the city, and also to identify those streets that are eligible for other revenues, and then not spend 100% of our city TBD funds to repair those streets, but rather than to mark those as grant opportunities. So we do an inspection of all those streets that are identified, but not all streets.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, when do you do your list of proposals, and when should we be thinking about getting in our suggestions?
In past years, the solicitation to council has gone out in the January timeframe typically. This year might be a little different. This year, we have a very large amount of grant match to pay for out of our TBD. And we also have our deferred projects from this year. So our 2020 projects didn't, the big street rebuilds and asphalt overlays, those didn't happen due to COVID and the timing of it. So basically what I haven't drafted the 2021 TBD plan, but I have a forecast of future TBD years, the revenues and the obligations, whether they be grants or other projects. And this year is looking pretty full. So I'm actually considering this year not performing the street by street inspection. It takes two of our guys usually, 3 or 4 days to go out and do all that. And I don't know if there will be reason to this year.
I kind of bet Liz and I are thinking in one same street.
You can email me or Rick at any time and point out a street that's in very poor shape. And typically when we receive those messages at any time of the year, I will go into our TBD inspection list and make sure that street is added in there.
Thank you.
I want to make a point also. We really try and do it as a scientific method. We don't want to ever be accused of catering to any specific individual.
Right.
I know you're not suggesting that. I just want to let you know that we did have a council member in the past that said he was promised things by a public works director and demanded that we pave his street. And that's kind of what drove us to this kind of independent process where we go out and we look at them all independently without any reference to who lives on a street or anything other than we do try, and like Chris said, we do try and spread it around so that when you look at a map, there's something in every ward. We don't want anybody thinking that we're catering to one ward over another. So we really try and spread around. And sometimes those there's like might be a big chunk in one ward and a small chunk in another, but we try and balance the money as well as much as we can. So we are tracking that. We're trying to be as fair as possible.
I think there's about $870,000 or so in that proposed 2021 budget for that account for leverage money.
Yeah.
Or however.
Yeah, and then before we're done with our construction season, there'll be another 400,000 or 500,000 in there based on But I believe Chris has said he likes to carry over $400,000 to $500,000 to the new year, just so that we have that money for grant match and also for planning purposes, so that we're not relying on taxes coming in. Is that correct, Chris?
It is this year.
Okay.
And some of the first years, we were really good at spending almost every dollar, a little too good, because we don't want to end up in the negative. So yeah, it's better to leave a little bit of ending balance in there.
Well, I think we're looking at just over 600,000 for ending balance. So that's right on what you were saying.
Yep. Okay, so Arterial Street for people that don't know is kind of our project management account. So we put grant money in and we take grant money out to pay for accounts, and this is where we kind of manage our projects. So in 2021, we're looking at a number of projects. Obviously, here we've got the grant for the Boone Street sidewalks, which is the other side of the street. From where we just did the Grays Harbor College neighborhood connection. We've got the downtown Aberdeen revitalization traffic improvements, which by the way is the worst name ever, and I didn't come up with it, but it's the roundabout on Market Street. And it's actually more than that, most likely. So that $515,000, that is PE phase, the finishing of the PE phase and the right-of-way phase. And we have another $1.5 million for construction, and construction will be starting next summer. So I don't know what portion of that is. I just realized that it's not in there, but we got to make sure that that is in there.
Hey, Rick,
Yeah.
where's the city at on the land purchases there? Because I know there's at least one more property owner involved, right?
There's 2 properties that have been identified through the PFE, which is a project funding estimate. And we are currently in the process of, we haven't negotiated with them, but we've talked to them. They know the interest, they know the project, and we have done our appraisals. The big problem with that, without going too far out the rails, is that there was some contamination in the property. So for FHWA, they don't want to reimburse for contaminated property, so they want it cleaned. So there's been a lot of issues dealing with how do we get it cleaned, and what is our responsibility, and to what degree does it have to be cleaned, and do we have to clean the whole property or just the section that we're using? So it's been a lot of questions that we didn't have answers for and have never dealt with before on a transportation project. So it's been tough to work through, but we did just have a meeting with the head right-of-way person for local programs last week, and we got clear direction that the process that we have chosen is correct, and that at the end of it, they will certify our right-of-way, which is the most important thing to get reimbursed for the FHWA funds. So this is a federal grant, FHWA. We also have our TIB overlay, west end of Heron. That was supposed to happen this year. But TIB did the same thing that we've done. They deferred. They told us that we couldn't have the money this year, that they didn't know how much money they were going to have, and that they were delaying the project. So, but we have received word that the project will be funded for next year. So we'll put that one next year. We have Stevens Elementary Safe Routes to School, which is a continuation of the Cushing sidewalks, $411,000 grant. We have the US 101 Safety Improvement Project Design. We just notified the consultant today of who we chose for that project. That is the road diet between, I think they call it road right sizing now, between the south end of the Chehalis River Bridge and Cosmopolis. So if Kathy Prieta was here, she'd be doing handstands. She finally got the project that she complained about forever. So that's how it got on our tip, and that's how it finally came to fruition. The construction won't happen until 2025. That's when we get funded for construction, but we have a lot of steps between now and then. That's all true, right, Chris? I'm not making stuff up there?
That's either true or pretty close.
Okay. And then the utility construction fund, we're working on that right now, building a public safety firing range. So this money was paid back to utilities and the police department for the January 5th, 2015 flooding and slides that was not covered by a FEMA declaration. The city of Aberdeen, Hoquiam had to kind of go at it alone. We applied for to our insurance, and we were able to get a number, quite a bit of that money back. It took us 5 years to do it, but we did finally get it, and now we're in the process of preparing to get our permits to build a firing range out the Charlie Creek Road area, and that's the area that we brought into the city limits here last year. Sewer utility. I know this looks good, but it really isn't. So the 2020 budget was 6,539,963, and the 2021 budget is 6,176,962. Difference of 363,000 under. Basically, what it comes down to is there's a lag. We've done a rate increase. Some of our projects are very large. That money is going to go into reserves, and we'll be spending it next year as match or something. It's we don't have enough money to move forward with all of our projects, obviously, so they're all staged and they're scheduled based on our rate study and our rate study implementation plan for our capital improvements. So I probably just said that in a bad way when there's a bullet point right there. Rate increase, which will allow for planning and implementation of future capital improvements. So we treated over 1 billion gallons of wastewater. We switched to city hauling biosolids. We used to use LeMays. We contacted Roger and proposed that we start hauling biosolids ourselves. We didn't feel we were getting a good value. He had to make money on it as well. We asked for authority and approval to buy a truck. We found one from the city of Vancouver, and council allowed us to buy that last year. And that truck is now, I think we paid like $15,000 for it. It was just the best deal ever. And that we now haul our own biosolids with city staff instead of paying up. I believe it was about $60,000 a year for hauling. Now we're doing it all in-house and just basically paying for fuel. We installed 5 new chopper pumps at existing pump stations. And like I said earlier, we're nearing completion on the bulk hypo, which is basically, it's just a conversion from chlorine gas to bleach. We use bleach to disinfect now instead of chlorine gas, which is much safer. Challenges, there's that big number. So we have the COVID issue, we have engineering being overwhelmed, and then we have continued operation while dealing with the continued capital improvements and upgrades that have been recently estimated over 27 million. That was what the rate increase was for. That's what we're, obviously the rate increase isn't going to pay the whole 27 million, but it allows us money to apply for grants, loans, pays our payments, makes everything possible. So I feel like the consultant did a good job on that rate study, and I think it's real numbers that make sense. So I think we're in a good place to get that work done. The sewer utility proposal is we're going to continue progress on the capital improvements and upgrades. This year's project is the influent screening and conveyance. We got pump station upgrades and an I&I study. And the I&I is it's infiltration and inflow. And basically that is water seeping into the ground and getting into our sewer conveyance, or direct lines into our sewer manholes. Our treatment plant deals with typically on a rainy day, it should deal with about 3 million gallons of wastewater. When it rains hard, we get upwards of 20 million gallons of wastewater. So we're treating a whole lot more than we need to. And the problem with that is if we can't reduce that, and we've gone through a lot of effort to reduce that, and they have reduced it. But if we can't reduce it, then we have to build a plant to treat it all. And obviously it's going to be more expensive to treat 20 million than it would be to treat 3 million. So we've written some money in there for some I&I work as well, to hopefully to find some. There's some big ones out there. We can't find them, but there's some big ones, whether it be an 8-inch storm line connected right to the sewer line or the sewer manhole. We don't know. There used to be back in the day, everything was combined. It was called a combined sewer, and sewer and stormwater ran together out to the river. and sometimes in ditches, sometimes in pipes. But now we have a separate sewer, but there's still the possibility that some of those cross connections are there someplace, and they're all underground and they're really hard to find. Last year we bought a television van, and we're out looking for those cross connections right now. That's what our sewer guys are doing. So hopefully we'll have some success there. Any questions on sewer? Okay, moving on to water. Hope everybody's still awake. Water utility has 17 employees. Responsible for operations, maintenance, and construction of the domestic water distribution system, including the headworks, which is the Mount Usky Dam, the water treatment plant, reservoir storage tanks, water mains, water meters, and fire hydrants. The budget, 2020 budget, was $6,050,834. And the 2021 budget is $9,899,398, which is a difference of $3.85 million. Important to remember that water is a self-funded utility. So Fund 404 water utility accomplishments: replaced approximately 1,850 feet of 2-inch steel water main with PVC. The steel water main is degrades over time and ends up with lots of leaks, and we have taken on a plan of replacing all our 2-inch steel water main in the city. So every year they try and get a couple thousand feet of 2-inch water main. That's the main water line was used. So there's still a lot of it out there, but we're making progress. We paved 650 lineal feet of gravel road at the filter plant. The reason this was important was during the summer, it became an absolute dust storm. We're trying to keep dust out of our water filter plant, out of our settling basins. So by paving that, it keeps the dust down, makes it a much cleaner operation. We assisted public works departments with priority work. Water departments everywhere. They have guys that can do construction work. They have guys that can do concrete work, and we freely use them throughout the city. They might be somebody working on a park. They might be somebody working at the police station. So that's that's part of what we do. Replace 6 antiquated hydrants and 15 water valves. The hydrants run about $3,000 a piece, and so you can see why we don't replace them all at once. We meter them in, try and get 6 to 10 a year. I think we asked for 10 this year, I believe. The rate increase again, which we went through, and we received an ecology grant for $75,000 to address the seismic concerns regarding the north slope of the Reservoir 1. And that is a project that is ongoing right now as well. 2020 challenges is addressed. We got 2 big projects right now in water utility. One is, you can see the picture of the reservoir, and you can kind of see right there at the Y, there's a log boom. Everything to the north is sedimented in. There is pretty much no storage in that. You can see, this is an old picture, but you can see where it's shallow there on that right fork, where you kind of see the discolored there. That's the bottom. So what's happened is there's been a lot of sedimentation come down, and we have to address it. So we have a consultant right now working through that process, and we think we have a good idea on how to do it. I believe we budgeted for $4 or $5 million for this project in our capital improvements. And as it turns out, they've listened to our concerns and they've listened to our suggestions, and they're trying a new way, which would basically, we'd do some modifications to the dam itself. And during high flows, when the water's already turbid, we would flush it and allow it to flush downstream, which is exactly what fishing or I don't know who owns that hatchery. Do you, Chris? Is that Fish and Game or is that Pogies?
I'm not sure who owns the hatchery.
Well, they want the sediment in the river because over the years since that dam's been there, it has scoured the upper reaches, and there's no sediment between our dam and down to the fish hatchery. So it's all moved downstream. So they want it back in the river if possible for fish grounds. And then we also have the screens and covers, which is the other big project that we're dealing with. Okay. So 2021 proposal. We got a filter plant chlorination. That is bulk hypo for water. So basically, instead of chlorine gas, using a dilute bleach to chlorinate the drinking water. Bench dry pump station, 75,000. That's a antiquated pump station that is, it has a pump that's been welded back together, and it is on the verge of not being viable anymore. So when that happens, we'll have to move one of our portables up there and deal with it then. We're in the process of getting a pump station approved through Department of Health. So hopefully it'll make it to the point where we get that replaced. We have a leak detection. Leak detection is basically, they have a van that comes out with real sensitive equipment. They attach leads to the valves on either end, and then they listen to see if they hear water moving. And if water's moving, then that's a leak between those 2 points, and they have the ability to narrow that down and find where that water leak is underground without digging it up. I participated in the last leak detection for the city of Aberdeen, and that was when I was in college working for a company called EES, and that was 25 years ago. So we haven't done any leak detection since, and we have some major leaks that we can't find, and they're not showing up. So they might be in the river, which, because they'd be, and we wouldn't find them there, but we believe there's something over in Southside that's big that and the problem is that we have to address it. It's a mandate by Department of Health. If we produce we only have the ability to have a certain amount of waste when we pull water and make it potable. Dredge Mount Usky Dam, that 200,000, that's planning money. That's engineer, consultant, specialized work. That is no construction. Purchase of pumps and VFDs. Which is this for, Chris? Which pumps? Is this the 3 that we're looking at a tech memo from HDR right now for replacing the 65-year-old pumps? I think that is.
Yes, that's what that is.
Okay, those are 65-year-old. You got 3 65-year-old pumps that don't have VFDs, and we're replacing them. There's no parts for them anymore. We're replacing them before they break, and we have big issues. A water meter radio tower, that's to add redundancy and to our SCADA system in town, and also where we intend to put it will also allow us to reach all of our 150 meters out the Wishkah as well. Purchase and replace of necessary pumps. There's a number of pumps that Mike has identified that need to be replaced without the BFDs, and that is their budgetary number for that. The floating covers of liners are 4 million, and then purchase install new membranes, 810,000. The new membranes last about 5 years. So it's about $1 million for 5 years, which is about $200,000 a year. The good thing is that we have recently switched to bulk hypo at the treatment plant, which has reduced the amount of potable water that we have to make by about 20%. So that's going to give us more life on those membranes as well. So, it didn't make a lot of sense to treat the water and then send it to the treatment plant to use to the wash clarifiers, but that's the process we had. Of this, we're looking at a loan of, I believe, 4.5 million. Is that what it was? 4.5 or 5 million? That's what our water department loan was going to be.
Yes.
Look, yeah, and that is for basically for the covers and liners. We're looking at purchasing the membranes out of reserves, and the rest of the stuff has been budgeted, and we have money for that. The loan would be about 5 million. The nice thing is that we don't have any debt load at the water department. We paid off all of our loans. So of course, like any good American, when you pay off your loan, you get another one. So stormwater utility, 2 employees. The 2020 budget was 726,600. 2021 is 590,000. A difference of about $138,000. The difference, flip it there, Chris. The accomplishments, continued compliance. We have an NPDES phase 2 stormwater permit. Lots of requirements in there that we have to do. Most of that's done by the engineering department. Preventive maintenance on stormwater pumps and outfalls, and then paid for eligible stormwater expenses in the street department. That's what we've done is we've transferred $500,000 out of stormwater utility to the street department every year to cover costs that associated with stormwater. So sweeping, ditching, those type of things that the street department does, that money is switched to street department so that the street department general fund is not paying for a utility work. Um, 2020 challenges: maintain our pumping service of an aging system while North Shore levee improvements are being designed and constructed. So we are holding it all together. Sometimes not as well as we'd like. One project that we had in here, we had it in last year, and we deferred it, was actually we deferred it because it was in the budget 2 different places, and there was only revenue for one. But it was the Farragut Street pump station. So now the Farragut Street pump station needs, you can see a picture of the separation and the settling. It needs some serious work. We talked to a consultant. They came out and gave us an estimation of $350,000 worth of repair work. So we put that $350,000 in the budget last year. And we put that as a line item in general fund. The mayor last year took that and put it in stormwater, but then didn't reduce the $350,000 that was going to the street department by $350,000. So it was accounted for twice, and we couldn't do it. But we've taken it out. It was in a week ago. We took it out recently because we have applied for a grant to get the Farragut Street pump station completely replaced. And what was the grant amount on that, Chris?
It was a little over $2.5 million.
$2.5 million. And we have heard back from the funding source, and they have said that it's a little steep, and we would be much more competitive if we had some match. So maybe the thing I should have done was not take it all completely out of the repair money. I probably, if we could have left $200,000 in there as match for that new pump station, that probably would have made us a lot more competitive. So that's something to consider. Industrial water. Responsible for operation and maintenance of industrial water system, including the intake facility on the Winishi River, the tunnel from the intake to Lake Aberdeen, and the distribution mains to Cosmopolis and Hoquiam. Though basically the same budget, 662,000 last year, 664 this year. Last year we did did a tunnel assessment. Was a specialized consultant because of all this, the inspection work and the safety requirements that they had to go through. They did identify some issues in our proposal. We are looking at doing those tunnel repairs as specified in the tunnel survey. I think it was $50,000 or so. Obviously, the challenges are one of our biggest customers is Cosmo, and they've been out of work for the last 7 or 8 months. So, and when they go back, it's hard telling how viable that company is going to be. So, we do have, as part of our proposal is to rebuild the 4 rotating screens at the Waynuchi intake. You can see that picture. There's a building kind of right there in the middle that runs north and south. And in that building are rotating screens. So the rotating screens are 65 to 70 years old. And they're the oldest still operating rotating screens by that manufacturer in the United States. So we actually had the manufacturers still in business, and they came out and did an inspection, took a whole bunch of pictures. They're really proud that they're still working. And then they gave us an estimate of $475,000 to fix them. So we put that in the budget, and we talked about it a little bit, and we decided that we should leave that $475,000 in the budget, but it is our intent to try and do it ourselves. We don't know if we can. We've had our equipment techs out there already. They're confident they can do it. We're just not quite there yet. But it's something we're going to look at for an in-house repair, and they believe they can do it for 25% of that value. So that's something to be aware of. I looked at my budget worksheets, and it has been removed. The 475 was removed, and a 90,000 was put in. And I think the 90,000 is, yeah, but it says something about rebuilding the screens. So anyway, I don't care if it stays that way. We can keep that lower amount in, just as long as the council is aware that if we can't do those in-house repairs, it is going to be a $475,000 repair, and I'll just have to come back and get a supplemental budget for that if it turns out that we can't make those repairs. I will budget that and show that documented any way you would like to see it. Equipment rental operations. We have 2 mechanics. They're responsible for the maintenance of vehicles and equipment. They maintain the fleet impressively, so they do a good job. The cost associated with equipment rental operations is sometimes questioned whether it's something that the city needs. I know we've talked about in the past of doing away with equipment rental operations and sending everything out. I absolutely believe it's a viable department, needs to stay. It allows us to get our equipment fixed in real time right away, as opposed to sending it out to shops and waiting for it. A lot of our equipment is specialized. Our excavators would have to go to Kent and Seattle, Olympia, some of them. Not a lot of places that work on it down here. So anyway, they've done a good job of keeping their billable time up. They're about 75% billable, which is they've really reduced their overhead. The problem is that we have an old shop, we have an old equipment, we have and we pay our mechanics well, and they're city employees, and a city employee has a fringe benefit package, unlike a mechanic at Early Tire. So yes, we pay more per hour for our mechanics, but they do a good job for us, and they provide a service that is really needed. So they are also assisting us. They assist with purchases. They do a lot of stuff. They fabricate, equipment. We buy now. We're at the point where we just buy trucks without boxes on them, and we have between the water equipment techs and our mechanics, they fabricate the boxes custom designed how they the employees would like to see them. And it's the trucks that they've done are really impressive. They look fantastic, save us some money. And 21 proposal is just to continue current services. The reserve, new equipment purchases with small percentage of match dollars to FEMA funds. This is the $600,000 we got for the Fry Creek pump station that we took as an alternate project because we weren't going to replace the Fry Creek pump station as it was pre-disaster. So we have purchased a 12-yard dump truck, a 5-yard dump truck that we came for approval with. We are looking at replacing, like I said earlier, a mini excavator and a skid steer in the street department. We did some variable reader boards, and I think that leaves us about $100,000 left that we have to spend. And we have to spend this on public works equipment. There's no other option. It has to be used in a manner that would, on equipment that would be used in digging out from a FEMA declaration, some kind of storm. So something, that's why we were able to get the variable reader boards and the trucks and excavators, things that would be used in an emergency.
Like your illustration there, that's pretty cool.
And I think that's it.
So council members, I think it's pretty easy to see how easy it would be to get into the weeds on this. Thank you, Director Sanger. That was, I don't know, was that like a half a day's time? The rest of the day, you guys just sit around eating bonbons, right? Do any council members have any questions for Rick Sanger? Or
I'd like to add something real quick too. We didn't put a lot of our budget numbers up, these documents. If anybody has any questions, I kind of assumed that you guys would have it in front of you. I didn't realize that you wouldn't. So if when you get your budget, you have any questions about anything in there, don't hesitate to just call us and ask. You can even send us an email and we can respond by email so everybody can see it if that's what you'd like. So
I think this lays the groundwork for when we do get those numbers to look at them. It kind of tells the story when we get those. And
okay.
Once again, I don't know about the rest of you, but this is a reminder. Last year, I promised myself that maybe we would just do half of public works at a time. There's so much to go through, and that maybe we can digest this. I know it's late, but if anybody has any pressing things that they want to make sure they get answered tonight, feel free to ask.
Well, I was just going to ask real quick on the levee project. How far out time-wise do you think are we going to see equipment coming in here and laying out chalk lines and digging and filling in and building the levee?
Well, I'll defer a little bit to Chris on this. He's the project manager, but right now we're not funded. So we can't, we're still in design, and because we've had some setbacks. We got direction from the railroad that we needed to be on the north side of the tracks and then allow us to work within the railroad right away. And 2 years down that path, we get word from the railroad that we're not going to let you do that anymore. You've got to go pick another route outside of the railroad right away along Fry Creek, which totally created a real issue for us, because now the Fry Creek pump station had to move. The alignment had to move, creates a need for a modification to our Clomar. anyway, so it as an alternate, we jumped over the tracks like they told us they didn't want us to, but we are allowed to do. And by doing that and coming south, going through port property, now we don't have to build a whole lot of the levee because now we're in high ground. So the offset is actually a savings. It's just it costs us time, and that's the problem. It costs us a lot of time.
And that's part of the untold story, isn't it, Rick, that came to us at our last council meeting when we were talking about the port leasing us the property for so cheap for so long. Well, that actually was a realignment of some of that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it cost us about a year. But it's like anything else, when we have a set of buildable plans, we can go with a shovel-ready project and try and get funded, right?
Right. And we have recently just applied for a grant to build the Fry Creek pump station. We had some money for a Fry Creek pump station, but that was at a different location and we weren't ready to spend it. So, but that money came with us able to use it for a number of different things, and we're using it for property acquisition and to tie down the right of way, which is probably the most important thing right now, is to get the alignment and the right of way acquired that we need to build this levee. So I believe Chris has worked really hard on a brick grant, and with our consultant, I believe it was for $15 million. And so we're hopeful. I mean,
and I think it was in February, wasn't it, where you came to the council and we authorized you to hire a consultant to work on right-of-way acquisition. So once we have that, we can move a little more quickly, right?
Yep. Chris, you wanna offer some input if you're still here?
Yeah, I'm here. So in response to your question, Alan, I would say that of the phases of work that are funded, everything that happens before construction is funded. And Rick spoke to where we are at in the schedule, and there's still work to do, but all of the planning work, the design, permitting, the right-of-way acquisition, everything that goes with it, that part is funded largely in part to the Office of the Chehalis Basin's very sizable $10 million chunk of money that came in at the last biennium, and also some other multi-million-dollar funding that came in through Department of Commerce and some other places. So what we're trying to do really hard is to leverage that money that we have from the Office of the Chehalis Basin into grants from FEMA. Rick mentioned the BRIC program and the Economic Development Administration. We have parallel grants going in to leverage some of that money for the Fry Creek pump station, but remains unfunded is the majority of the construction. And that's where we are trying really hard to stay involved with the Office of the Chehalis Basin. Our project is part of the Chehalis Basin strategy. It's one of the core components. And that is not easy. It takes years of meetings and communications to be a part of that plan. So, that's some of the long-term things we're working on. But the Office of the Chehalis Basin is developing their next biennial budget right now. And I think I'm gonna have to stop here, because if you've been following any of this all ties in with the proposed dam on the Chehalis River, the Aquatic Species Restoration Plan, the state legislature arranging the bonds to fund the Office of the Chehalis Basin for $75 million a biennium, out into the future. And we are really trying to position ourselves to have as much of that money as possible. So, I guess while we're all here, one thing to think about is things that we can do to better position ourselves. We're trying the best we can in Public Works, and with a lot of others who are helping, but there's a lot to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Does anyone else have anything? Well, hearing none, I want to thank all of the department heads who presented tonight. It's clear that we've got a lot on our plate. And every year at this time, I'm thinking that this is really, it's a little bit of a slog, but it's really valuable. So thank you so much for preparing your reports and making sure that we're well positioned to come up with a good budget. If I'm not hearing from anyone else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank
What
you.
happens next, Deanne?
Next is we have, next on our meeting list, actually, Patricia Soul, do you have that list of meetings up?
Tomorrow night, we have a meeting with the regional fire, Aberdeen Hoquim. I don't know if that's an entire, but
That's not part of the budget. There's 3 council
Right.
members who are appointed to the Regional Fire Authority, but at our next, we have a public hearing coming up, I think,
Next Tuesday,
yes.
and it's a council meeting as well as the budget first reading will be.
So we'll definitely want to dive into those budget books when we get them on Friday sometime, so.
How are
So-
those going to get to us?
So that I was going to send them via Adobe. And if anyone wants a paper copy, if you want to email me, I can make sure we put one in your mailbox.
It's wicked.
So,
One last thing I want to say about the budget, and Patricia, I think I'm correct here, just so you know, what is proposed in these budget meetings last night and tonight is the complete request for budget items. And unless my math is way off, it's roughly $3.7 million above revenues, projected revenues.
so
So
these
that's
are
what we're looking
department
at.
head requests, and you're going to fine tune it and give us your request. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've left it this way so you guys could all have input on that as well, so.
Appreciate
But
that.
they're gonna
Because
ultimately-
we've often heard after the fact what department heads really asked for, so I like that.
But you're gonna give us the mayor's budget. That's what we're gonna see on Friday, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think I will just offer, I'm social distancing myself. If somebody doesn't want to go into City Hall to pick up a paper copy of the budget, I'm willing to have one handed to me out the door and bring it to you.
You know, I'll tell you something. City Hall, I don't think it's ever been so clean. I think when it was
Yeah,
brand new,
come
it wasn't this
see
clean. Them guys go through there every day, wiping everything off, and it's clean.
That's because our L&I claims have gone up because we're slipping and sliding on the clean floor.
I thought that was just the afternoon's recreation.
Yeah.
It's after that 2 martini lunch.
Hey, you had a 2 martini lunch?
Everyone, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Good evening.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.
Stay healthy.